Louie Tee. Welcome to the 2019 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, where your man Louie Tee aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2019 NFL Draft using our baseball grading scale. Single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts here in the Draft Wrap-Up Series, as we cannot tell how these players are going to pan out, and I don't want to discount any of these young men before they get their chance in the National Football League. And so we'll get a score for each and every single player selected in X said team's draft. We'll apply bonuses when necessary, get an aggregate score, divide by the number of picks, which will yield us an overall grade for that team's draft. We'll then move on to the next team in the series picked by you. That's right, you, the viewer out there, are in total control, as this is the You Pick format. Simply be the first to leave a comment in the comment section of this and future videos in this series stating two things: the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. So some examples would be Chiefs next, Kansas City next, KC next, Chiefs. You get where I'm going with this. As a matter of fact, the next team up in the series is none other than the Kansas City Chiefs. And Brett Veach had what I termed a very average draft last year. As a matter of fact, I wasn't blown away by what he did in his first draft as Chiefs general manager. Took a bunch of SEC players, some guys that I thought needed some work, and Breland Speaks was your first pick last year. Didn't have a first round pick because you traded up for Patrick Mahomes. And so I wasn't in love with Breland Speaks as your first pick. And then it just went on and on. You took Reginald McKenzie late in the draft, and you were moving him from the defensive side of the football to the offensive side. And it just seemed like a bunch of hodgepodge SEC players. Now, we fast forward to 2019. This is an important draft. The Chiefs are right on the cusp of doing something. I don't know what. Now, right now, they look like a clear-cut favorite to be in the AFC Championship if they're able to stay relatively healthy and if Patrick Mahomes is who we think he is moving forward. That being said, with the Tyreek Hill situation unresolved at this moment, no more Kareem Hunt, and you've pretty much moved on from that, and I really like Damian Williams, and I may be in the minority, but that's just how I feel. I've always liked Damian Williams, and now that he's getting a bigger opportunity, he's showing people that he can handle the load. That being said, you're moving on from some of your playmakers. I know Chris Conley wasn't a big guy, a playmaker for you, but he was a part of your team. And so you look at what you've done defensively. You had to move on from your ex-defensive coordinator, Bob Sutton. He was a mess. Really, I've talked to so many Chiefs fans over the years. They wanted Bob Sutton gone 10 years ago. All right, so you finally move on, and now you've got a guy that has got a track record in this league, has won a Super Bowl as a defensive coordinator in Steve Spagnuolo, and he comes in, and you're going to change this defense up a little bit, and you brought in Tyrann Mathieu to help you in the safety position. No more Eric Berry, no more Justin Houston. So some of those veterans, even though they weren't as productive, but those were voices in the locker room that resonated. Those guys have moved on, and so now it's a new crop of players. And this is a big draft because, as I mentioned, we don't know what's going on with Tyreek Hill. You've got some guys that you've got to replace, and you got a new defensive coordinator. He's going to need some more pieces to play with. You went out, you traded Dee Ford away, you brought in Frank Clark, you brought in Emmanuel Ogbah, you traded straight up for him with the cornerback out of Minnesota, Eric Murray. And so you brought in Alex Okafor to try to give you some more pass rush. So you just brought in three guys that you think can help you at edge rusher. That was going to be a major need going into this draft. Well, you solved that. No first round pick because you surrendered that in the trade for Frank Clark, and you paid him a boatload of money to come in and get to the quarterback. But nonetheless, there are a number of things that still need to be resolved with this football team. And so this is a big draft because this draft could potentially put you over the top. This draft could potentially put you back a little bit if you don't make smart decisions. I actually think Brett Veach did a hell of a job in the 2019 NFL draft, much better than he did in his first draft in 2018. Let's take a look at what he was able to do as we take a look at the Chiefs and their 2019 NFL draft haul. Starting in the second round, no first round pick. Again, Chiefs surrender their first round pick this year due to the trade for Frank Clark. So no first rounder. That went to Seattle. So you start in the second round. 56th overall selection, wide receiver out of Georgia, Mecole Hardman is the pick to get us started. So This one threw me for a little bit of a loop. I'm not gonna lie to you. I didn't see Mecole Hardman being one of the first receivers taken off the board in this draft. He was the fifth receiver taken in this draft. Um, he went before a lot of guys that I thought were going to come off the board fairly quickly, but his skill set is one that is unique and it does garner attention. And I talked about this during my draft party. I talked about this on my podcast, Louie Tee Network podcast, for those of you unfamiliar. Louie Tee Network podcast available on Stitcher, Google Music Play, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, and of course the website louieteenetwork.net. Check that out. But I talked about how I was just surprised at how early he came off the board, but we all know what this was about. This is simply an answer in an insurance policy is what it is, a glorified insurance policy in case the Tyreek Hill situation goes way sideways. Now, I don't really know what's going to happen. We all think that Tyreek Hill is guilty of something. What exactly, we don't know. But he came into the league with baggage. It's starting to rear its ugly head again. It's only a matter of time before something happens with him and the Chiefs can't avoid it. They've already done a really good job of navigating their way through this whole process. They did it with Kareem Hunt, didn't waste any time getting rid of him. And with Tyreek Hill, they've suspended him indefinitely for the time being. Obviously, it's the offseason, so that's the right thing to do until you clear all of this up. I think he's going to be back when it's all said and done. But again, you don't want to be caught in a situation with your pants down if he were to create some kind of transgression off the field that could affect you during the season or right before the season. So he's volatile. We know this. So this is an insurance policy in case he can't keep his head on straight. And it's not a bad one. There isn't another Tyreek Hill walking the streets. Just know that, okay? But in any event, if you're going to try, this is as close as you're going to get. This isn't a bad option here, okay? So, second round, 56th overall selection, Mecole Hardman, wide receiver out of Georgia, 5'10", 187 pounds, ran a 4.33 at the NFL Combine. The game that stuck out for me, I didn't even have to watch the tape because it's embedded in my memory bank. It's etched into my brain, is that national championship game in 2018 where he destroyed Alabama, scored 2 touchdowns in that game, had the catch down the sideline, smoke in the corner and scoring a touchdown there, had a touchdown right before the half. He was very impactful in that football game, and that was just scratching the surface, okay? So not that game aside, I said, well, let me see what he did in 2018. So I turned on some games against South Carolina. He was magnificent in that game. Watched him again versus Alabama, this time in the SEC championship. Not as much flair for the dramatic in that game. Didn't have as big an impact as he did the year previous, but nonetheless, an explosive and dynamic playmaker, as you'll find in the 2019 NFL Draft. Hardman started out as an athlete at Georgia, cutting his teeth on special teams after exiting high school as a quarterback. But by his sophomore year, he was getting reps at wide receiver and had a memorable national championship game versus Bama with 2 touchdowns. A by any means necessary wideout, which that's my way of saying you get the football, similar to Parrish Campbell at Ohio State, you get the football in their hands by any means necessary. Look, it doesn't have to be in a traditional sense. They don't have to run a slant. They don't have to run a comeback. They don't have to run a 9-ball to get the football. Just get it to them. Jet sweep, bubble screen, hitch. I really could care less. A shallow crosser. Just get it in their hands and allow them to be the athlete that they are. And so he's definitely a by any means necessary type of wide receiver at this point that is continuing to develop as a route runner, but his speed will help with the transition. What I mean by that is because he's so damn fast. All it takes is one time for him to smoke a DB. That's it. And again, teams are going to come in knowing that this guy can run, but they're going to still test him. They're going to still want to see it for themselves. All you got to do is break one team off. All it takes, week 1, I would go deep with this guy week 1, play number 1. I would send him on a 9-ball, and I would just throw it, even if I overshoot him by 4 yards, just to know this guy can run, and we're going to go deep with him, just to put it on tape. I want teams to be afraid, very, very afraid of this guy's speed, so that following weeks, they'll back off, and then that comeback, that 12 back to 10. Why do we see Tyreek Hill open week after week after week underneath? because teams don't want to get beat for the 74-yard touchdown. Teams don't want to get beat for the 59-yard score. They much rather make you drive on an 11-play, 83-yard touchdown march than to give it up on a 3-play, 77-yard touchdown that was culminated in a 74-yard bomb. So when you show them speed, they're going to back off. They're going to give you the underneath stuff. And that's how Mecole Hardman is going to develop, I think, as a wide receiver in this league. And we saw it with Tyreek Hill. Remember, he came in as a raw product, all right? And he slowly developed into the guy that we see now that is just tearing up NFL defenses. They have no answer for him on the football field. And so Mecole Hardman is a work in progress. He does not run the route tree right now. But again, over time, and I don't expect his process to be as quick as it was for Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill from year 1 to year 2, it was amazing. I've been talking about this since his second year in the season in the league, that I've never seen a receiver mature and become a polished route runner the way Tyreek Hill did from year 1 to year 2. It was an amazing transition and transformation, and the growth and development that we saw from him from year 1 to year 2, year 2 to year 3. It's similar to Kawhi Leonard in the NBA. How good he has gotten over the life of his career. You generally don't see that. You're a grown man by the time you get in the NBA. You are what you are. You're not going to learn how to dribble better at 25 years old. You may learn how to shoot a little bit better, but to see the way Tyreek Hill developed, I think Mecole Hardman has a chance to be very similar in that regard. So he's a chess piece that you can move around with a special teams background, much like Tyreek Hill, another guy you can put back on punt returns and kickoffs and things of that nature that can help you. And Hardman could develop into a great value Tyreek Hill. Look, that's what the Chiefs drafted him to be, essentially. Yes, you lost Chris Conley, who played special teams and was a fast receiver, but that's not what you drafted Mecole Hardman to do. You didn't draft him to replace Chris Conley. You drafted this guy in case of an emergency. You can break that glass and go out and pull Mecole Hardman out in case something happens with Tyreek Hill. If Tyreek Hill is able to keep his nose clean off the field, then guess what? You got 2 of these bastards. What's better than 1? 2 of these goddamn animals that can kill and shred any NFL defense and take the top off and score from any point on the football field. So in any way you slice this, it's a great pickup by the Chiefs because he fits what they do. And you know what else is going to help him? The kind of offense that they run. Running RPOs and things of that nature, he's going to be wide open over the middle of the field. Travis Kelce running over the middle of the field, opening up things. He's going to be open because of Patrick Mahomes and his ability to extend plays. This guy's going to make plays for you in a major way. And if Tyreek Hill is able to play, and I think he will be able to play this year, this guy's going to have even more space and opportunity to dominate. He'll be an upgrade over the Black Mamba in DeAnthony Thomas. Because remember, you've had athletes in the past, but this is a different caliber right here and a different breed in the second round with Georgia wide receiver Mecole Hardman, who I was just amazed that he came off the board this early, but I understand why. And so in the second round, 56th overall selection, wide receiver out of Georgia, Mecole Hardman for me is, and let's go ahead and take that need off the board, and I'll explain these needs here in a second. So his comp is Tyreek Hill. That's a really simple one. You could also go with Tyler Lockett. I see a lot of that in him. But for me, they drafted him to be Tyreek Hill Jr. And so I think right now he's a great value version of Tyreek Hill. And we'll see if he can develop and turn into the kind of threat that Tyreek Hill has become as one of the best in the NFL at this moment. As we move on to the second round, again, they did it again. 2 second rounders for the Chiefs as they have the 63rd pick here. And they get an absolute steal by my account here in defensive back out of Virginia, Juan Thornhill. So let me explain to you my draft needs. So in front of you, you see a list of positions that I deemed roster needs going into the draft. Now, obviously, linebacker is on that list, and we'll take linebacker off here in a second, but because you made a move to acquire a linebacker that I think can really help you. And that's the reason I thought you needed a linebacker, because I thought you needed to add more team speed defensively, especially at the linebacker position. I thought you did that with Dorian O'Day last year out of Clemson, but I thought you needed to add more linebacker speed. And so Anthony Hitchens and Reggie Ragland are one and the same in terms of physical downhill thumper type linebackers. They don't run all that well. So I thought you needed more help at linebacker, and you got that. We'll talk about that when we talk about the next pick. But those were the needs that I put them in the order of importance. So in my estimation, safety was the most important need you had coming into this draft. You lose Eric Berry. Again, he wasn't as huge a part of this defense a year ago, but you still need to replace him. Yes, you went out and you got Tyrann Mathieu in the offseason. That's a hell of a pickup. And I know you drafted Amani Watts last year out of Texas A&M, or a couple of years ago. I think it was last year, as a matter of fact. But I don't know if he's ready to contribute. And I just felt like safety was a position I would throw up in my mouth if I saw Sorensen on the field again. Like, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm over that. So I think a guy like Juan Thornhill here in the second round is a phenomenal pickup, and the versatility that he gives you is just off the charts. We'll talk about that in a second. But let's take safety off the board. We don't know if he'll actually play safety, which we'll get to here in a second, but this is a phenomenal pickup. So you've gotten rid of two of your biggest needs at safety and at wide receiver in this draft already. As we get to Juan Thornhill, versatility. Juan Thornhill's versatility makes him an intriguing prospect as any in this draft, especially at the defensive back position. The ex-cornerback transitioned to safety in 2018 and excelled with a career high of 6 picks of his career 13. 6 of them coming in 2018. So he was outstanding in 2018. He was outstanding throughout his career, but 2018 transitioning to safety, playing a new position, this guy was phenomenal for the Cavaliers. Thornhill lit the combine ablaze with his 40 at 4.42, a 44-inch vert, which is like Byron Jones-esque, and then a 11.7 broad, which is just dumb. So it all shows up on tape, too. It's not like this is something that he's a workout warrior, but you don't see these things play itself out on film. It all translates to the field. He can play in the box as an 8th defender, can play underneath in zones or as a lurker defender. He's a guy that can disguise with the speed to still get to the single high safety position. And I watched him do that on tape where he comes down. He's all the way mugging the A-gap. And he kind of backs up a little bit like he's going to stay in the box as an 8th defender. And so the quarterback's thinking, oh, I got no safety help back there. I've got one-on-one across the board. And then he hauls ass back to the middle of the football field. And so he's a guy that can disguise coverages very well. It looked like cover 0. It was cover 1. So he's a guy that can do a number of different things. He can drop over the slot as a nickel, or he can convert back to cornerback, his original position, and give you production there if need be. He tackles, although he doesn't wrap up. He's a shoulder tackler. He's one of those guys that wants to throw his shoulder around, and generally it's enough to get the guys on the ground, but he also can miss because he doesn't wrap up. And to that point, he will overrun tackles at times. Sometimes he can be over-aggressive to the football, overrun a play. Guy just cuts back and he goes flying by. But that being said, he's reliable, man. I feel good about Juan Thornhill as my last line of defense. And he's a steal at the 63rd pick in the second round. That's just my personal preference and opinion. I think that he was my 3rd rated safety in this draft. And I thought he was going to go closer to the top of the second round. I did not think he would be around literally in the final stages of the second round. And to get this kind of value with this kind of player, and it's exactly what you need for your football team, because you're hurting at cornerback, you're hurting at safety. And so I think this is a major pick. And I don't know what they're going to do. He doesn't even know what they're going to do with him at this point. They could make the switch to corner. And you got Bashaud Breeland, and I think he's going to help your cornerback situation a ton in the upcoming season. But you still need help. And Kendall Fuller is more of a slot. You got him from the Redskins. You played him out wide. I thought he struggled at times last year. I think he's more natural in the slot, which is where he excelled for the Redskins, and everyone wants to move him outside. If it's not broken, don't fix it. The guy was an outstanding, one of the best slot corners in the league. Stick him back in the slot, and if Juan Thornhill is everything and then some at the cornerback position, I say you put him outside, and you put Breland on the other side. You put you take Fuller, you slide him in at the nickel, and all of a sudden, you got Armani Watts at one safety, and you got the Honey Badger at the other safety, and all of a sudden, you've got a revamped secondary that's ready to rock and roll and potentially change the game for you. And now with the presence off the edge with Frank Clark and Emmanuel Agba and Alex Okafor, and we know what you have inside with Jones and Noddy and all of these other guys, and you added some more depth down there with Saunders in this draft. The sky's the limit, all right? And then you add Darren Lee at linebacker with some more speed. This Chiefs defense could be a totally different animal in 2019. So it just all depends on what you want to do. Maybe you say, look, we're fine with Fuller out wide. We like him out there. We think he's going to be fine. It was a transition for him coming over to the Chiefs last year with the trade, Alex Smith and all that stuff. So he's going to be more comfortable in year two. We really think Rashad Breeland's going to come in, man up one side of the field for us. And we're going to roll with him at safety next to Tyrann Mathieu. I'd love that too. I mean, this guy is so versatile. He can play nickel. He can play out wide. He can play safety in the box. He can play single high. You name it, he can do it on a football field. This is an extraordinary pick. 13 career interceptions at University of Virginia. 26 PBUs. This guy's all over the football field. This is a steal. This is robbery is what it is. All right. In the second round, 63rd overall selection, defensive back out of Virginia, Juan Thornhill. You already know what this is, but in case you don't,
hit from high, hits it deep, it is out of here!
So for me, the comp for Juan Thornhill is Byron Jones, the safety turned corner of the Dallas Cowboys. Remember, he had a similar trajectory, lit up the NFL Combine, made himself what he was going to be a second round pick. The Combine pushed him over the top, made him a late first round pick to the Dallas Cowboys. They started him out at safety. He wasn't as good there. They moved him to corner. He's been lights out, one of the best corners in the league. And so I see the same skill set here. They had the same type of combine. They've got the same body type. They've got the same ability, although Juan Thornhill's ball skills are much better than that of Byron Jones. But they're both willing to tackle. I love this selection, and then we're going to move on to the next one now. Third round, 84th overall pick, defensive lineman out of Western Illinois, Colin Saunders is the selection. So Colin Saunders for me is a guy that comes in and is going to add to the depth that you have up front along your defensive line. Breland Speaks is a guy that I think may see some reps along the defensive line now with this defensive change that you're going to go through with Steve Spagnuolo. Also, you drafted Derek Noddy a year ago or two. I believe it was last year you drafted Derek Noddy out of Florida State. And you, of course, have Chris Jones, who is just an animal, a man amongst boys, tearing it up in the interior. And now you're going to add some more depth down there in Colin Saunders, who he first got on my radar at the Senior Bowl. We all knew about the backflips and stuff going into the Senior Bowl, but that's all nice and fine and dandy. I don't really care about that kind of stuff. Can you play football? Hey, it's nice you can do backflips. Jason Pierre-Paul can do a bunch of backflips at 6'6". It was fun to see. Can you play football? He could. That's what matters. So with this guy, yeah, it's crazy to see a 6 foot, 330 pound man doing backflips like they're nothing. But can you play football? He checked that box at the Senior Bowl for me. And the thing that I needed to see was, can you play against this level of competition? You're taking a step up, a big step up in competition. How did he fare? Well, he fared well. He played his ass off at the Senior Bowl. His girlfriend was pregnant and she was about to have the baby, and he had to go home for that. They had a beautiful daughter. He comes back to the Senior Bowl in time for the game and gets a sack. Sacks West Virginia quarterback Will Grier on the opening possession of the game. The guy was outstanding during the Senior Bowl, and I think it's what helped him become a third-round draft pick here for the Chiefs. That being said, I felt like linebacker was a big need for you coming into this draft because I thought you needed more speed at linebacker, as I referenced earlier. I didn't think defensive line was a need with Jones and Noddy last year, but I think this was a best player available type of selection. You can never have too many defensive linemen. You can never have too many edge rushers. You can never have too many corners, so forth and so forth. So this is a really good pickup. But I made the list of needs for the draft prior to the trade for Darren Lee, as this happened just a couple of days ago. And so you no longer need linebacker help. So we'll go ahead and take linebacker off the list of needs for this Chiefs football team, because you're good at the linebacker position now with Darren Lee. Dorian O'Daniel is still on the team. You still got a couple of thumpers, as I mentioned earlier, on your football team, and Reggie Ragland, among others. So you don't really need any more linebackers now. So now I can take that off of the draft needs. Again, it was a need going into the draft. You didn't address it, but you addressed it afterwards. So that being said, let's talk about Colin Saunders here with the 84th pick, 6 feet, 324 pounds. A squatty-framed, powerful defensive lineman with quickness and a second gear to close on ball carriers and QBs. Can disrupt plays with his quickness and a wicked latch and snatch technique. Uses low center of gravity to bench press linemen in hopes of shedding them to make a play. A huge knock on him is that Saunders can get stuck on blocks, especially when initial move is stalled, and lacks ideal length to be able to disengage from offensive linemen. So what you'll see from him is a guy that is very quick off the snap. And when he's able to win initially, he is a load to deal with. When he doesn't win initially, he can get stuck on blocks and he can become a guy that is easily handled on a play. Now, I've seen this guy latch and snatch, and it looks like he's about to lose a rep and then just toss a guy out of the way. I've seen him run a guy over, all right, just simply get a full head of steam and just bulldoze a guy out of the play. I've seen him really use strong hands to displace blockers in the run game. So there's a lot of things he brings to the table, but he is a smaller guy at 6 feet. He does have shorter arms. So he is a guy that can get stuck on blocks, but he is, to me, a one-gap penetrator. He's not a two-gapper. He's not a guy that needs to be playing behind blocks. He needs to be affecting the play immediately. He needs to be trying to get into the backfield and disrupt off the snap. That's his calling card. He's not a guy that needs to be waiting around and eating up space and blocks. He's not going to be effective that way. To me, he's a one-gap penetrator, and I think that's what the Chiefs are drafting him to be. And I look forward to seeing this guy have an impact for the Chiefs moving forward. More depth along the defensive line. Love this pickup by the Chiefs. To me, the comp here for him is Brandon Williams, the Baltimore Ravens defensive lineman, who is a two-gap run-stuffing defensive lineman, but he also can be a penetrator. He can also be a guy that can be physical at the point of attack and drive guys into the backfield. And so these are all things that I think he's capable of. But more than Williams, who is more of a disruptor from a power standpoint, I think Colin Saunders can be more of a disruptor from a penetrating standpoint. So I'm anxious to see what he's going to produce at the next level. As in the third round, 84th pick overall, Western Illinois defensive lineman Colin Saunders for me is So we move on to the sixth round now, as there's no fourth or fifth rounders for the Chiefs in this draft. And it's the 201st overall selection, cornerback out of South Carolina, Rashad Fenton, is the pick. So this is a pick that surprised many. A lot of people didn't see Rashad Fenton necessarily getting drafted, let alone I don't want to call it this early. It's not like he got drafted in the 4th round, but even in the 6th round, there were probably other corners that a lot of teams may have had higher on their board than a Rashad Fenton. But he's a solid football player. 5'11", 193, 4'5", 240, 5 career interceptions, 19 pass breakups. Nothing flashy here, though. All right, a solid corner that does everything average. No exceptional traits, although he does have some ball skills. I saw him pick off some passes, watched him against Georgia, watched him against Arkansas, watched him against Vandy. So I saw him make some plays, but not overly fast, not the most aware corner. There's a play versus Georgia. There's a deep ball in the air. He had already had a pick earlier in the game, so he's feeling good about himself. The ball's floating in the air. He's coming from a little bit of a distance, but he has no idea where the ball is, goes crashing into the receiver, 40 yards down the field, picks up a senseless pass interference penalty. Could have easily been avoided, and he ultimately could have picked it off if he could have located the football, but it's just a lack of awareness there. Doesn't have explosive closing ability, although he has shown flashes of above average closing capabilities. So I did see him close on a couple of plays. He didn't break it up. It was still caught, which speaks to his inability to close fast enough, but he was right there. So there is a little bit of the ability to close on plays, but not at an elite level. Okay, nothing to differentiate him from the next guy at the cornerback position. Not terrible versus the run, but leaves a lot to be desired in the run game as a tackler. He'll get a chance to compete, but doesn't strike me as a guy that would be beat out an established, consistent veteran because he doesn't strike me as a consistent football player at this point of his career. He may grow into that, and the Chiefs don't have a tremendous roster at the cornerback position, so anything's possible here. He could easily crack this roster. As a matter of fact, cornerback was one of their needs. Excuse me. Cornerback was one of their needs coming into the draft. So we'll go ahead and take that off right now and add that to the mix of positions that they've taken care of. And so I look at him as a comp for him, Sterling Moore. If you remember, Sterling Moore was an undrafted corner that bounced around the league, had a cup of tea with the Cowboys, with the New England Patriots, with the Baltimore Ravens. He had a bunch of stops around the league. He would always find work. He would always find his way into the lineup and be in the middle of something. But he was never consistent enough to start on a consistent basis in this league. And that's what Rashad Fenton is to me. Similar size, similar speed, similar ability. And so we'll see what Rashad Fenton brings to the table for the Chiefs. He's solid, though, and it's not like he's useless. So in the 6th round, 201st overall selection, cornerback out of South Carolina, Rashad Fenton, for me, is all right, we move on to the next pick. This one is in the 6th round as well, 214th overall. Running back out of Utah State, Darwin Thompson is the selection. All right, so with Darwin Thompson, we're going to go ahead and take running back off the list as they selected a running back here. And when I looked at the running back position with this Chiefs football team going into the draft, you let go of a number of guys last year, you know, and you're turning over the running back position. You brought in, I believe you brought in a running back in free agency, Carlos Hyde, if I'm not mistaken, which is a really quality backup running back. But I still feel like behind him, there isn't a lot of depth. There isn't a lot of guys you trust. And so you needed some more depth at the running back position. And I think Darwin Thompson has a legitimate shot. As a matter of fact, I fully expect him to make this football team. He fits what Andy Reid likes to do. He fits what this Chiefs team is right now, with a bunch of explosive playmakers at just about every single position on the offensive side of the football. And so he fits in with what the Chiefs do. And so I fully expect this guy to make your football team. But before I even get to him, just as an aside, there's a quarterback for Utah State named Jordan Love. I don't know if you know who this guy is. I ran into him. I told you the best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup. No, seriously. The best part of watching film is running into someone unexpectedly and finding out that, hey, man, this dude's a baller. I don't know what year, what classification he is in, but this guy, Jordan Love, I'm telling you right now, this dude is a baller, man. This dude's going to play in the NFL. He's going to get drafted. I don't know anything because I don't generally study underclassmen, so I don't know where this guy is. This dude is really good, okay? I'm just telling you right now. Jordan Love, quarterback at Utah State, dude has NFL written all over him. That being said, Darwin Thompson, 5'8", 200 pounds, ran a 4.5 at his pro day, 39-inch vert, 10.6 broad, so explosion written all over this guy. 28 reps of 2.25, so somewhat of a little muscle head too. And so he brings a lot of stuff to the table, man. A dynamic scat back with the ability to affect the game in a multitude of ways. Can run in between the tackles, although not his strong suit. Can run outside zone to perfection. That is what he is made and built to do. Can catch it out of the backfield and will give up his body in pass pro. And then I was watching him in a game for San Jose State. And poor guy is in the end zone, and the defensive tackle beats the center. And poor Darwin Thompson is the last line of defense, stopping the quarterback from getting sacked for a safety. And he just puts his body on the line. And this 330-pound behemoth is just mauling this guy back into the quarterback. And Darwin Thompson is using every ounce of his 5'8", 200-pound frame to stop him from getting to the quarterback. And he held up just long enough for Jordan Love to get the football away and complete a pass. It was an act of heroism, the likes of which you don't see at the running back position very often. So he will put his body on the line to protect his quarterback as well, even though he is diminutive in size. Surprised many by coming out a year early and was disappointed because he thought he was no lower than a 4th-round pick. If he comes in with a chip on his shoulder, the Chiefs could possibly unearth a late-round gem here with Darwin Thompson. He caught it a ton out of the backfield at Utah State, so you can use him in that capacity. The guy can do a little bit of everything. I think this is a great fit for the Chiefs. I fully expect this guy to make the roster. My comp for him is Danny Woodhead. Similar stature, similar size, similar speed, a lot of the same quicks, a lot of the same attributes that made Danny Woodhead a problem in the league for many years, I think is going to make Darwin Thompson a problem in the league for years to come. And so this is a really quality pick here in the 6th round, 214th overall selection, running back out of Utah State. Darwin Thompson for me is. So we wrap this Chiefs draft up in the 7th round, 216th overall selection. Lineman out of Syracuse, Nick Allegretti is the pick. Did I say Syracuse? I meant Illinois. I got my orange teams mixed up. This is a guy that I watched in a game versus Penn State and against South Florida. And I was actually impressed, man. I went in thinking, okay, this is just one of those late round flyers you take on a lineman. He's not going to make your team, but got to make a pick, right? It's the 7th round. Just pick somebody. Let's go home. But let's take offensive line off the list. And the Chiefs have knocked out all of their needs in this draft. Now, how effective were they in doing so? We'll find out. But I can tell you this much. They got a hell of a safety. They got a really good, intriguing prospect at wide receiver. I think that the running back that they got is going to make the roster. And this guy here in the 7th round, Nick Allegretti, is a guy that I was really, really pleasantly surprised with. As a matter of fact, 6'4", 310 pounds, pleasantly surprised by the play of Nick Allegretti. Apparently, many were shocked and dismayed when he wasn't invited to the combine, and now I see why. He's got above average movement skills, which allows him to climb to the second level comfortably, mirrors well enough in pass pro, and has a wrestling background and can play center or guard and even played on the D-line at Illinois at one point. He's versatile, he's physical and tough, and moves adequately enough, and he'll compete to make this Chiefs roster. And I think the reason I had offensive line on the list of needs for the Chiefs was because of the absence of Mitch Morse, who moved on in free agency, and I felt like you needed to address that void left in the center of your offensive line. And you may have a guy already in-house that you feel like can come in and help, and Morse had some injury history issues, and so it's not like you don't know what life without Mitch Morse looks like, but I thought you needed more depth. Even if this guy isn't capable of starting, you needed more depth along your offensive line, and I think he's going to provide you with that. I would not be shocked if Nick Allegretti made this roster. I mean, I was really impressed with what I saw. He will lunge at times. He'll put his head down, won't see what he's blocking, and get beat. He's a guy that his feet are good. They're not great, so elite quickness can give him fits up front. But I saw a guy that moved well, got to the second level, engaged, stayed engaged. I saw a guy that was nasty and physical at the point of attack. You saw a little bit of that wrestling background kick in. There's a lot of good things here with Nick Allegretti, and I think that this is a guy that can help. And so in the 7th round, 216th overall selection, offensive lineman out of Illinois, Nick Allegretti for me wraps up this Chiefs draft as So, as you can see, the Chiefs wiped out every single one of their draft needs. Linebacker wasn't selected, but they did make a trade post-draft to acquire ex-Jets linebacker Darren Lee, who is a speedster out of the Ohio State University. He had really soured in New York. They think he's soft. They think he goes over top of blocks and doesn't want the smoke with linemen that are coming his direction. You're going to find out whether he is up to the task at taking on guys or as they say, standing on the railroad tracks when the train is coming. But that was the knock on him in New York. But the guy is uber talented. I think he's already got 6 or 7 career interceptions under his belt with the Jets. So this guy can make a difference for your defense, and he's exactly what you need because you lack that kind of speed to carry tight ends, receivers, and running backs down the field. He can do that for you in the pass game. So I think that's also a big help moving forward. So I tell you, you had a really solid draft, much better than you did last year. If you ask me, this is a much better haul than the one you got a season ago. And for me, Nick Allegretti, his comp is Brandon Fusco, the offensive lineman that spent time in San Francisco and Atlanta was the last stop, if I recall correctly. I think he's still a free agent as we speak right now, but he was a guy, a 6th-round pick, and he stuck in the league, and he hung around, and he battled, and that's what Nick Allegretti is going to have to do if he wants to be an NFLer moving forward. And so I thought this was a solid draft by the Chiefs. I really did. And I thought they did some good things. They addressed some major needs. Safety was a big need for me. Corner, a big need for me. Whether Thornhill plays corner or safety, he's going to address one of those needs for you right away. Receiver was a big need because you can't count, as you saw, you can't count on Samuel Watkins to stay healthy. You know that. You knew that when you signed him to the deal that you signed him to, that he's not going to play 16 games in any given season. He's going to get hurt at some point. And so with Tyreek Hill forget about the Tyreek Hill issues. You needed a receiver before that happened. And now with the Tyreek Hill issues, you definitely needed one, and you went out and got Mecole Hardman as an insurance policy. So love that selection. I think Darwin Thompson in the 6th round could end up being a late round gem for you. This was a quality draft. I'm not so sure about the corner, Fenton out of South Carolina, but outside of that, I thought this was a really quality draft put forth by the Chiefs. Let's take a look at their score here. And so that's going to do it for your man Louie Tee here with the Chiefs and their 2019 NFL Draft wrap up. They need more weapons for Mahomes. I know you got the Robinson kid out of Florida that does some good things from time to time. You've got Samuel Watkins. When he's healthy, he does help. Obviously, you've got Tyreek Hill. Now you add Mecole Hardman to the mix. Obviously, you've got Travis Kelce at the tight end position. And so now you're adding stuff at the running back position. And I think this team is they got better this offseason. And I really think they got better on the defensive side of the football. Adding Frank Clark. We'll see what Emmanuel Ogbah. I was never a Emmanuel Ogbah fan coming out of Oak State. We'll see. He fell out of favor in Cleveland, obviously. And so you traded a failed draft pick for one of their failed draft picks. We'll see if they fare better in their new respective teams. But I think you got better. You definitely, addition by subtraction, got better at the coordinator position with Steve Spagnuolo coming in and Spags picking up the mantle at the defensive coordinator position. And Bob Sutton, it was time for him to go. And the playoffs highlighted that, and it was the end of the line for him. So I'm anxious to see how this defense looks in 2019. I think we know what Mahomes is, but we'll see what he does for an encore following an MVP season in 2018. So I'm your man, Louie Tee, signing off. Remember, check out the Louie Tee Network podcast, available on Stitcher, Google Music Play, iTunes, TuneIn, Spotify, and of course the website, LouieTeeNetwork.net. Subscribe to the Louie Tee Network if you haven't already done so. Plenty more Chiefs content coming your way, and really more content for all 32 teams in the National Football League coming your way. So don't delay. Hit that subscribe button right away. If it's not your man T, it's not the best NFL coverage it could be. Until next time, I'm your man Louie Tee, signing off. Have a good one.
Louie Tee Network.